Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. This is episode 19. I am Dr. Hillary Lampers here with Ryan Lampers. We have a pretty exciting guest today, Dr. Jade Teta. He's going to be talking all things man, testosterone, and brotherhood. But before we get on with him, I wanted to give a few announcements. In the podcast, he is going to be talking about his testosterone program. It's an online do-it-yourself program for naturally enhancing your testosterone. It also has information on testosterone replacement therapy and how you would go about that, understanding your biochemistry and how testosterone works in your body. And we wanted to give you the link to that program. If you'd like to get it yourself, you can, doing it in the convenience of your own home. And that link is huntharvesthealth.com/programs/testosterone. Secondly, if you want the show notes for this podcast, you can go to huntharvesthealth.com/podcast/Jade Teta1. So our last announcement before we start talking with Dr. Jade is I wanted to offer to the Hunt Harvest Health community the option to meet with me either in my office or via the internet for health consulting. One of the biggest questions and emails that we get since starting the Hunt Harvest Health podcast is health-related questions, nutrition-related questions, labs, things like hormones that we're going to talk about today, and basically just natural ways to improve your lifestyle and your vitality. So I have added a page to the Hunt Harvest Health website for medical and health consulting. You can go there, and if you are interested in possibly meeting with me and working on some of your healthcare questions, you can fill in the form that's on that page via email, and you can also call our office. The phone number's there, but if you want to fill that email in, it will come to us, and then we can send you all the details that you would need to meet with me if you wanted to do that. So that's the last announcement, and it kind of goes along with our podcast today. If you do feel that you need help with your hormones, if you feel that your testosterone is low, and you just have questions regarding maybe some labs you've had in the past, or you wanted to get new labs done, obviously this always depends on where you live, but this may be an avenue for you to do some of that. So check that out on our huntharvesthealth.com/medical consults page. All right, enough said. Let's get into this podcast. Enjoy. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. I'm Dr. Hillary Lampers here with Ryan Lampers, of course. And today we have a very exciting guest that is going to keep you interested and wanting more for sure. His name's Dr. Jade Teta, and he's really a legend in the natural health, performance, and personal growth arena. I consider him a colleague, I consider him a mentor, and definitely family. And I feel that exposing him to our community is going to do so much good change that it's really exciting for Ryan and I. So just a little bit of background on Jade. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Biochemistry and a doctorate in naturopathic medicine. He's an NSCA Strength and Conditioning Specialist and an American College of Science Medicine instructor. He's co-creator of Metabolic Effect with his brother, Dr. Keoni Teta, and it's a comprehensive platform for addressing metabolic health. They have written 2 revolutionary books on weight loss. The first one was The Metabolic Effect Diet, and the second is Lose Weight Here. Besides having worked with over 10,000 clients, he has created online programs that have helped hundreds of thousands of people to transform their health and mindset. Today, he will be introducing one of those programs, his new testosterone replacement therapy program, on this platform, and we will be diving deep into all things man today. So, Jade, are you there?
What's up?
Hey.
Ryan, Hillary, love you guys. How are you?
Oh, good. How you doing this morning, Jade?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Excited about this. And thank you for that, Hillary. That's so sweet, that intro.
Well, you're welcome. I could have kept going on, but it was like...
Yeah, you got quite the resume, man. It's impressive.
I appreciate you guys as well. I love the stuff you're doing. I'm excited to talk to you.
Yeah, well, we feel that you are going to be a great guest for our community. The Hunt Harvest Health community is a great group of outdoorsmen, outdoor women, people who are just looking at their lifestyle and longevity. And not only that, looking at how to improve their body, but improve kind of their mindset. And I felt that you'd be a great person to talk to, because really the foundation of that, and what we see with a lot of people that are sending us feedback, is they just want more information on kind of the foundational aspects of health. A big one is metabolism and weight loss, which, we know is a big issue in today's world. Incorporating that along with having to deal with the stress of life, right? Like family and jobs and relationships. And why don't you give us a little bit of background on yourself and kind of some of your philosophy, and we'll go from there.
The best way to think about me, I think, is probably as a meathead philosopher. And what I mean by that is I am a hardcore fitness dude, grew up in the world of powerlifting and bodybuilding, and was basically a dumb jock for a lot of years, and then started to pick up books and read, and just started to realize I could build my brain the same way, I build my body. And that kind of parlayed into a biochem background, that parlayed into going to natural medicine and going to medical school for that, where Hillary and I share the same alma mater, Bastyr University. And ultimately what I do now is I really am all about helping people, sort of reconnect to their mind, their muscle, and their metabolism, is the way I like to say it. To me, these things are oftentimes seen as different. I think anyone in the hunting world, and you guys can jump into this and sort of let me know if this is true, but one of the things that I think is that hunting, being outdoors, being connected to nature in that way, really connects us to mind, muscle, and metabolism like nothing else. It is sort of a back to, our evolutionary state in the purest sense. And so for me, I gravitate towards, this idea that we humans are, modern day Westerners are we're kind of lost. We're kind of starved for meaning. We don't have a whole lot of thing that connects us back into our purpose and what we actually are doing on this planet to begin with. And so that is my sort of goal set now, to help people be the best they can be in all those realms. And one of the things I was excited about being here is to talk about this idea that we are not really meant to see these things as separate. Our mindset and our physiology, they really are built to be honed together. So let me give you an example of this to kind of see what Ryan kind of thinks about this. But in my way of thinking about this is that when someone is out in the wilderness, someone is out on the hunt, you are essentially priming your entire physiology and your mental state, and essentially for survival. And there's something about that hones your mindfulness and hones your ability to think and hones your physical stamina and hones your strength. And this is kind of how we humans evolved. This is how we got smarter. This is how we got faster. This is how we got stronger. And all of this is sort of, to me, tied into what I teach, which is why this is an exciting topic for me. But that gives you a little bit of a background of me. I kind of came at this first from the physical perspective, building my body, and that kind of brought me into then sort of building my mindset. And I've actually come to the point where I don't see them as separate at all.
That's the biggest thing we feel when we are interacting with people. And I know, just watching Ryan, his whole process of going out hunting is not just a physical, really the physical piece of it is really important because you need a lot of stamina, but most of it, like 80% of it's mental. And people wonder, like, how does he do this every year? How is he so successful? How can he go out by himself for 2 weeks, right? Not talk to anybody and have that. He has just learned that in that process, he's building that connection between his mind and his body. Mm-hmm. And that time alone, which we don't think is important anymore. We are all so consumed with being, like our phones and just being around stimulus all the time.
Yeah, I think, for me, like Jade said, I think a lot of people have kind of lost their way. They've kind of just, maybe grown up in an urban environment and they haven't had opportunity or just seen the light, I guess. They haven't seen what you get out of being out there, whether you're by yourself or with a buddy or just out in nature. You get so much out of it. For me, I just relax more. I mean, as soon as I get away from the buzz of the city and the traffic and work and all that, it's just such a good feeling. Your energy levels go up. I'm not so frustrated. I've dropped kind of the working mindset where I'm always thinking about work, always stressing out. It is a place that I think we're more naturally fit into is, in the backcountry or just out in nature, hunting. I get a ton out of it, and I always come back a lot better person for it, for sure.
What's interesting about that too, you guys, is that from the biochemical standpoint, just what you said, it's sort of like there's this badass factor in this regard that allows you to build your body, but at the same time, one of the things that we know is that let's take testosterone, for example, because everyone, and especially guys are kind of there's an pandemic of low testosterone now. And one of the things we look at with testosterone is we look at the ability to raise our testosterone levels while simultaneously reducing our stress hormone levels, specifically cortisol. And there's something about, I call testosterone sort of the posturing hormone, because it's basically this hormone that when you're out and about, if you stand up straight, if you, have better posture, your testosterone goes up. If you go out and, pick something up, your testosterone goes up. If you go out into a survival type of experience, even if you're just watching it on TV, guess what happens? Your testosterone levels go up, even if you're just watching it, right? And so there's something about this effect that will raise testosterone levels and simultaneously reduce cortisol levels. And this is where some of the most magic things can happen. Now we try to do this naturally in our world. Like, for example, I go out and lift weights, to CrossFit or something like that to get this testosterone-like effect. And then I go to the park and go for a walk in a green setting to lower cortisol. Well, when you're going out into the wilderness in this way and you're climbing up mountains and you're shifting over stuff and you have this big pack on your back and you're chasing down deer or confronting wildlife and that kind of stuff, you're basically having this effect that we're trying to reproduce in the urban setting. Yeah. And so one of the things I would say is, isn't it really interesting that certainly if a hunter goes and does some CrossFit and does some hiking in the city within a park, they're going to be able to use that same hormonal milieu, that same testosterone cortisol effect, but they're actually getting it when they go out into the wilderness as well. And so one of the things that I think is pretty amazing is that we look at this lifestyle and basically say, okay, when I'm out, when you're out, Ryan, in the wilderness, I mean, essentially you're getting this effect, but then how do we duplicate this when we're at home as well, so that we don't have the lowering of this hormonal effect as well through, basically going home. I go hunt on the weekend, then I go sit in a chair for 8 hours for 2 weeks, and then I go hunt again maybe some other time. This to me is sort of how do we take people who aren't doing this and make it last throughout the month, and how do we use sort of these excursions to our advantage hormonally? This to me is a fascinating sort of concept to me, because the way we humans evolved was very much in this cyclical type of approach. I mean, most hunter-gatherer tribes, if you look at them, they are essentially waking up early in the day and basically going on the hunt for most of the day, sometimes covering 12 to 20 miles in a day, oftentimes carrying gear with them, and then hauling things back to camp so they can eat. And this creates this very lean, fit, healthy, primed brain and body. And so we can use this sort of model of what it's like to be out and about in the wilderness and kind of bring it back home for the hunter who doesn't get to be out there all the time, or for someone like Ryan who is actually competing on this level. Because you said it, Hillary, as we were talking prior to getting on. And from my perspective, these guys and girls are very much athletes. And so now it comes into a discussion of how do we prime their performance when they're at home before they go out. You know what I mean? So I would just be interested to kind of hear your guys' take on that, because that's the way I really see it. It's a very natural, back to basics way of living that can have profound impact on mental and emotional and physical health.
Yeah, and I think what we're seeing right now, and we've all kind of noticed this, I believe, the hunter, you can call it a hunter athlete. It's this kind of movement where folks are recognizing there's a huge benefit to going into the mountains and being absolutely as fit and strong and conditioned as you possibly can. And it's interesting that you mentioned that. I never really tied those two together, but yeah, maybe that's why. Maybe that's why we're doing it. We get so much out of working out year round. I'll be honest, what I used to do and what I do now are completely different. Back in the day when, in my teens and early 20s, I'd go out and I'd hunt for, a couple months out of the year. And like I mentioned, I felt great. You just get this, this rush back there, and you feel so good when you're back there. And then it just kind of goes away once you come out of the hills. And then, how we kind of get that back now in the off season is we work out, we run with weighted packs, and we train and we shoot and we do all these things to try to replicate what we're going to be doing in the fall to try to, I guess, maintain that testosterone, keep those levels up. So, my question, why do you think, in today's world that we've lost so much of our testosterone? Why is that kind of an epidemic, as you mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, part of what's, if you ask people like Hillary, you ask people like me, you ask a lot of conventional and even alternative medicine physicians, the conventional doctors will kind of throw up their arms and say, we really don't know. And the alternative medicine practitioners will kind of, if they're being honest, will kind of throw up their arms as well and say, we really don't know. But at least in the alternative health movement, we have some ideas. And part of what is happening is, a lot of people will say, well, it's all toxins, right? Well, to me, I don't like the word toxin because I want to know what toxin are we talking about. But certainly things like persistent organic pollutants, which are things like bisphenol A and pesticide runoff and all these kinds of things are certainly probably having an impact. But of course, we also know that stress and its impact on the command and control center of our metabolism, which actually isn't the thyroid or the adrenals, it's actually the brain, the hypothalamus and pituitary, this area of the brain that is essentially our command and control center, takes a huge hit. Think of our brain like a computer program, and it is short-circuited with stress. And so stress is probably the number one toxin in the world, and it's also the number one testosterone depleter. So we constantly have this seesaw battle of stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, against sort of testosterone and human growth hormone. And so these two things are constantly battling back and forth. So when you are sleep deprived, and when you are overworked and overwhelmed at work, and trying to make finances work and all this kind of stuff, and constantly bombarded with, blue lights and all this kind of stuff, you are automatically taking a hit to that command and control center. You go out in the wilderness, and you're all of a sudden in an entirely different environment that is naturally, without you even trying, reversing all of that. Right. And so this is the reason why. And then probably the third reason, or third and fourth reason, is poor diet and nutrition and a lack of understanding how to move our bodies in a way that will produce a testosterone effect to help us get lean and faster and stronger and build more muscle. And so to me, it's this four-pronged approach. Yes, we have toxins in the environment, probably persistent organic pollutants. For those of you listening, by the way, you might say, Jade, where are these? Well, they concentrate in domesticated animals that we eat. They kind of bioaccumulate in the food chain. So these things from runoffs from plastics, chemical industry, in our water, things like that, in the fat of the animals we eat, which is not going to be the case in a wild animal. It's going to be less the case anyway, because we're actually messing up their environment too. But that's one thing. So we want to be careful about that. The next thing is stress, which we can talk an awful lot about because I know the three of us talking and we kind of understand what stress is at a little different level. But for those of you listening, stress isn't just anxiety and depression and overwhelm. Stress is, things that we might not take into account. For example, I know, Hillary, you guys have little ones at the house. A woman who's gone through pregnancy and is sitting there with their newborn, she might be elated, happy. It's a lifetime achievement. Maybe it's her first child and it's the best thing ever. Her metabolism is under extreme duress, despite being happy and elated because she gave all the resources to this baby. And, she's living a whole different life now. And she's sleep deprived, etc. That's what we need to think about stress. And then poor diet is huge. A diet of refined processed foods, lacking in vegetable matter and lacking in good quality, lean, clean proteins, which typically wild animals are going to be lean and clean, less fat and less pesticide residues hanging out in their fat that you do eat. And then there's the exercise component. And so if we're going to think about how we deal with testosterone first, and we can talk about, if you guys want, we can certainly talk about TRT and things like that, testosterone replacement therapy. But none of those things work, and I bet you, Hillary, I'll be interested to hear your take on this. But typically, testosterone replacement therapy is not going to work without these four things being in place, right? We have to basically have these four aspects taken care of: the way we train, the way we eat, the way we manage our stress, and the way we reduce pesticides in the environment. This is really the reason why. And isn't it interesting that when we go out into the wilderness, we are essentially reversing all of these things. All of these things essentially are reversed unless you're going to bring Snickers bars and Cinnamon Toast Crunch out into the wilderness with you and not eat what you're catching.
Which is exactly why I'm trying to get, to a lot of the listeners, and what I really push with kind of folks paying attention to us is we kind of create our own foods, and we're not going out there and eating junk. It's the one time a year where we get out and we want to continue to eat clean. We eat clean all year, and it'd be real easy to just toss those Snicker bars in the backpack and get some quick fix up there. But eating clean back there matters, if not more so than how we eat back here. So for sure.
What's interesting about that, Ryan? Sorry to interrupt, but a lot of times people talk about how, Hillary, in our world everyone talks about detox. Like everyone should detox.
Yeah.
Well, going out into the backcountry is the perfect detox. You're doing a natural detox for 2 weeks or however long you're back there, or for a long weekend, but not if you're bringing junk food with you. You know what I mean? Like, that just you're not getting the detox effects because you're essentially detoxing from stress, detoxing from persistent organic pollutants, and basically getting nutritive food in you and working out the correct way and sweating. It's the perfect detox. Like, someone needs to come up with a program that is like backcountry detox or something, because it is the best detox program you could possibly go on.
I never thought about it like that. I guess I do get my detox every year. A couple of them.
Yeah, I have to say, I've talked about this in a blog I wrote, is that Ryan will leave and he'll be stressed out and blah, he'll go on a hunt, or he'll even just go scouting, or he'll go out into the backcountry for a while. And it's the same for me. I would say, since we've had children and stuff, I don't get to do that stuff as often because, you can't take a 1-year-old out in the backcountry for very long. He comes back, he's physically whipped, he's physically tired, but he's just calmer. He's happier. And he's always been like that. He would get antsy if he couldn't go steelhead fishing on the river by himself. Every so often I'd be like, just go to the river, or like, get out of here. And he would come back and he'd be better. But I started doing more reading on this initiation from boyhood into manhood. And I think that for men, there is, for women, I think it's very clear that we have kind of a natural initiation into womanhood, right? Because we have menstrual cycles. And men don't really have that.
No, we really don't.
No, you don't. But you do, everybody changes, right? Kids hit teenagers and they just get weird because your hormones start kicking in. Yep. But in today's society, there's not really this initiation for a lot of men anymore into manhood. Interestingly enough, my stepdad is Native American. He gave us a bunch of books, old books. I never looked at them. I had boxes of these old Native American books. I pulled a couple out, and recently I pulled one out called Land of the Spotted Eagle, and it's by Chief Standing Bear, and he wrote it in 1933. And it was his story of his life living as a Sioux Indian on the plain. And he went through every stage of life. Babies, boyhood, warrior, hunter, their whole spiritual life, how they collected food. Before the introduction of sugar that he talks about, there was really no illness. Men were lean, and it's like people had their purpose. Men would just, from the time they were boys, to be self-resilient, to be hunters, to be warriors. And in that, they developed a great love for nature. And they developed a great love for the animals around them. And they developed a great love for their family. Their health was spectacular. We want to go back to a simpler way of life. We want to live like that. But that means in a lot of ways that we have to start creating these initiation type things, or we have to start from a young age with children nowadays to create that fortitude in them. Boys especially, because they don't have that natural kind of ceremony they go into manhood, is that a lot of them are from the get-go sort of being robbed of their masculinity. And I'm not saying that in a sexist way. But if you read a lot of the old texts about people who lived like that, they were healthy, they were balanced, the men did these activities, the women did their activities, and they had difficult lives, very difficult, but nature dictated their lives, and they learned to live with that. And in that, the cycle was more natural.
Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm just like, oh my God, this is such a cool topic because, I don't know if I told you and Ryan this, but I spent James Hollis is one of the foremost experts in male health and male psychology. He's one of the last Jungian psychologists on the planet. And I got to spend, basically a week with him last year. And he was talking about the healing of men. And one of the things he said is in every culture, every other culture, we had an initiation period for men where they were at times taken from their family and basically sat down, put through ordeals and basically explain this is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be a part of our culture. And this is what is expected of you. Now, the last remnants of that kind of thing, maybe the bar mitzvah, but, the closest thing most kids nowadays have to that when a boy becomes a teenager and, goes into manhood is sports. And not, it's basically like you get a little bit of that maybe in the hazing experience, in college, which none of these things are ideal or healthy in the way that they used to be. But ultimately, I was talking about this with Ryan. I think, how long it was, like maybe 6 months ago, we were talking about this. And this, to me, gets to the heart of the healing of men. And what a lot of men don't understand, too, is that I gave you 4 reasons why testosterone might fall. Well, the other thing about testosterone, it is very, very much tied to the mental state and what you think about your meaning and purpose. And so, to me, it's really cool, Hillary, and I'm not surprised that you would bring this up because, we kind of think alike in this holistic way, but a lot of people don't connect to that. So having a purpose and having meaning behind you dramatically impacts your hormonal base as well. And so to me, it's one of the things that as I was watching what Ryan was doing, I was like, everybody could use this as well as an initiation phase into sort of looking at their meaning and purpose in life. There's something about getting quiet and getting centered and being in a place that you're a little uncomfortable with, but is also sort of your birthright that gets you back honed into who am I, what am I about, and what am I going to sort of build for my life. And that definitely goes into and probably is the first thing we need to hone our healthcare. One of the things I think women have as an advantage over men is that they oftentimes have girlfriends that they have a support system. It's just more part of being a woman. But for us men, and I want to hear from Ryan's point of view, because I have a guess about this, but I want to see us men don't typically have that. We lose touch with that. You know what I mean? So, you hear about Ryan, right? You're going out by yourself typically, and there was typically men didn't do that. Typically men would go out with a group of men, and that was sort of their, sort of a way of connecting as well. And so men, not only do we as men have to, sort of understand get back in touch with our sort of warrior mentality and our purpose, we also need to kind of get back in touch with, this idea that the being around other men and sort of understanding what that's about and having that support system is important as well. But I would be interested if you feel that loss, Ryan, as well, and how connected you are to the other hunters in your world, because I know for me, it's certainly something that I think about often now as I age. That, I've lost touch with men in my life.
Yeah, I agree. I think, it's kind of weird. I think there's a select few of us that are kind of an anomaly, in the backcountry hunters. We go out and we really enjoy just the solitude and being alone. And there's so many reasons why we get, not every hunt I do is solo. There's hunts I enjoy, handful of guys going out and, the social aspect of it and coming back to camp at night and sitting around the campfire and telling stories. That is phenomenal. I mean, I love it. And I do it as much as I can. Then certain hunts I go off on my own and I get advantages there as well. But, I think, like I mentioned, I think a lot of us, the solo guys, we're kind of an anomaly. Most guys in the hunting world, I would say well over half, are going out there for that reason. They're going out there to socialize with their buddies. I probably don't do that enough, but I know a lot of guys, they'll go around and, man, they set up these giant, elk camps and just wall tents and tarp cities, back there. And these guys, maybe they're not as successful, but what they're getting out of it is completely different. I'm up there to really make sure that I fill my freezer and I stress, I shouldn't say stress myself out, but push myself to the limit. Because that makes me happy. That just makes me feel like I've had this great sense of accomplishment. I get way more out of that than sitting back and really relaxing at a camp. I get my relaxation when I'm pushing myself, if that makes any sense. But, a lot of guys, they do. They go up there and maybe they only get an animal, one every 10 years, which is really the norm, for elk guys. But they'll get up there and their best part of their day is coming back for lunch or in the evening and sitting around with those 10, 12 other guys and just, BSing and talking and telling stories and having fun. That's like, I see it all the time and I drive by those guys on the way up to my trailhead. But, some guys really get that. That's why they do it. And they get these advantages, in the way they do it. And I get some with the way I do it. But, I can definitely see, in my world, I do not probably get enough of that. Whereas I get my interaction when I get back from the hunt and I can sit around with my buddies or my best, my cousin, for example, we'll sit down, we'll talk hunting for hours and we get a little support there. But, I'm guilty. I definitely don't get the support or give the support I probably should.
Here's my theory on this as well. It's funny. I'm actually a lot like you, and I think a lot of guys, as I was listening to you talk, I'm like, oh, this is perfect, because I think a lot of guys are just like this. We're sort of like, there's times in our life when we want to be like that lonely lion on the plains of Africa, sort of just wandering around, figuring stuff out, and that's also equally man. You know what I mean? And so it's really interesting that we have this dichotomy, because I'm the same way. I consider myself pretty much an introvert. I like time alone as much as I like it with my bros.
Right.
And I think that's the danger. I think that's ultimately what I thought was interesting about what Hillary was saying, because the danger, I think, for us men is because we do have this sort of dichotomy, and guys like, I'm actually a lot like you, guys like you and I, we can easily probably go into this sort of lonely state and come back and have difficulty sort of reconnecting. But I think as men, and this speaks to the healing of men, we need both. We need time alone, time to sort of, reflect and be a warrior on our own, and also time in battle with our brothers, as well as time in love with our lovers. You know what I mean? And we don't get a lot of this sort of understanding of this balance. And again, for me, I'm sort of an endocrinologist in a sense that I'm always looking at how these things are impacting our hormonal state and our health. We think they're separate. They're not. One thing I thought was interesting that you were saying, Ryan, is, and I think you guys alluded to this as well, like you come back after this and you are exhausted, you know what I mean? And you're sort of like, I really worked, incredibly hard. Like obviously, killing something, and this I don't know, and I kind of actually want to ask you about, because to me, the idea of killing something like an elk in the backcountry and then having to, get that prepared, pack it up, haul that stuff out miles is like, I can't imagine how exhausting that would be. But ultimately, the way the hormonal physiology works, so we talked a little bit about the psychology aspects of this, but the way the hormonal physiology works is that's exactly how it works. It basically works in this sort of cyclical fashion. So I'm pushing myself to the point of exhaustion. What is happening during that time? I'm releasing testosterone. I'm releasing growth hormone along with cortisol and adrenaline. And then I get back home and I go to sleep. And I make love to my lover. I spend time with my bros, and all of a sudden, spending time with my bros, being with my woman lowers the stress hormones, and all of a sudden, the testosterone and growth hormone are there to grow us and promote us. And so I think what a lot of people miss in this whole picture is that, yes, there's a time to push. Yes, there's a time to dig. Yes, there's a time to, be in this very dominant physical sort of place where testosterone is elevated, human growth hormone is elevated, adrenaline is high, cortisol is high. But then we need to reconnect at some point with the things that are going to bring those hormones back, those stress hormones back down, so we can be in growth again. And this goes to food, this goes to stress, this goes to sex and physical affection, and this goes to camaraderie with your brothers. And so to me, there's a lifestyle here that, basically harkens back to what was naturally ours for so long. We didn't even have to think about it. But now we the three of us get to have this discussion, and sort of other hunters on the line get to kind of say, oh, I see now what I should be thinking about in regards to my health, that all these pieces are sort of coming into play. So if I really want to use this to my advantage, think about the way all these pieces fit, if that makes sense. And I don't know if that resonates with you guys or not, but to me, the story is clearly written.
Well, it makes a lot of sense, because being an outsider and watching hunting season come, watching the fall come, it's literally like watching an animal start. The time they go deer hunting is when the males are in the rut, like their necks get really big and they're stupid and they're looking for females, and that's when they're not thinking, and that's how they get killed, basically, right? And so it's the same with men, like watching Ryan go, and he's not rutting like for me. He's just like, it's getting closer, and you can see him. And
no, my neck starts swelling in August.
Yeah, we like have this. We've talked about this on another podcast, where I know as this gets closer, like everything starts getting done around the house. He's so efficient. Like I could ask him for 3 months to do something, and he's like, I'll get to it. And bam, like the week before hunt season starts, everything's done, because now he's like, okay, she's not going to ask me to do anything else. I got to get there. And then he'll go to bed the night before opening season, and his alarm goes off 5 times on a normal day. He's up an hour before his alarm goes off. He's had 3 hours of sleep. He's in his truck. He's driving all these hours, and then he's going to hike like 10 miles into the backcountry all in one day. And knowing the way hormones work and just what you described, you can see it happening in these men, where they just become like crazy rutted deer. They have to get to the mountain, and then they do the process and they come out, and this whole idea of, so if you're a wife who doesn't hunt, because there's women who hunt and we know them and they're just like a bro and they'll talk and it's great, but most of the time it's men and wives of these guys, like they come back and it's just the hunting stories, and it's over and over and over again. You're like, oh my gosh, how many times can you tell this story about hiking up a mountain and glassing and looking around?
Jade is saying that's important, right? That's the camaraderie. So
but what I'm saying is, it's like, now that you're
Jade under the bus next time.
Yeah, exactly.
Now that you're explaining it this way, it's all of a sudden like my doctor light bulb is going on, right? Like I see that. I can like almost smell it. I can like feel it when he's going into that space. And then it's so classic, right? He gets home, the same thing happens, and he's telling those stories and he's doing that. And then as hunting season ends, there's like this end. It's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do for the next 8 months? I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. But that kind of gets him through the season, and you can see him being healthier for that.
Yeah.
And I used to resent this. Like, I used to resent this fact that he loved to do this. And I always thought it was like he didn't love me. He did this for whatever. But now I almost see it like every other man out there. It doesn't have to be hunting, you know. It could be, I don't know, these seasonal things that people do to better their health. It's like, I almost see this as unfortunate for men who don't get that. Like, they don't get that time to experience those hormonal rushes and changes. And again, going back to, you know, Chief Standing Bear and this whole idea that men are meant for these things. You cannot hold a man in a cage and expect him to be a man. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and you know what I'll say about this? My one worry about this whole conversation, and I'd love to hear what you guys think on this. Here's my one worry about this, is that ultimately it is almost impossible for many people listening to this to not begin to bring the Western modern world into encroach into the backcountry, right? So we talked about this with the idea to make this, you know, a complete stress detox, you know, a complete toxin detox, a complete metabolic hormonal reset. But you want to, in my mind, one of the things that becomes a problem is that why not, if this is the lifestyle you're living, make it a complete lifestyle? You know, you have to be very careful with, you know, one of the things that we did not have as humans back in the day, when you get to this place where you got testosterone, growth hormone, adrenaline, cortisol, and you burned up all these calories. Well, back in the day, you know, they were eating, you know, pounds and pounds of lean protein, right? And berries, and, you know, trying to get, you know, tubers and get some starch in their body and things like that. Nowadays, you can basically go to your local cheesecake factory and consume 4,000, 5,000 calories in one sitting, and your body's primed to do that, in a sense, if you don't be careful with some of what's going on here. And so you'll oftentimes see this happen. And that's where you then have to go back to, what is the backcountry telling you, I think. And it essentially tells you these are the foods that are going to heal you. I don't know if this is true, but I heard a story of Lewis and Clark, that they basically, the Indian guys that were with them were eating pounds and pounds and pounds of buffalo along the way, just to keep, you know, healthy, and to get the protein and sort of the fats in them and everything else, so that they could make this journey. And oftentimes, I think this is sort of forgotten. And instead, what people do is they can easily go into cheap, modern day commodities, which are not going to really help you, especially if you're trying to be an athlete. And so some of the things that I would say could work, that work for the modern day hunter, would be things that I'm sure Lewis and Clark would have had along with them if they were, you know, if they were available back then. Things like whey protein and things like, you know, good quality, you know, oils and things like that would help this along, you know. But I'm just curious as to, you know, how the modern day hunter athlete deals with this, because if they're any of the other athletes I deal with, it can become a real issue. And so if you're someone listening to this who's kind of like, well, I can see this, but how come I'm not necessarily seeing and feeling the changes in my body? It's because you have to follow this story to its complete conclusion and try to duplicate what you're doing out in the backcountry for the long weekend or the 2 weeks, and bring that home and duplicate it at home, which is essentially lean, clean proteins, lots of vegetable matter, and good quality fats with enough starch to sort of drive your energy stores, but not so much that you end up storing fat and suppressing some of the growth promoting hormones. And so to me, this is the only worry that I have that can happen, is that you go out into these excursions and you come back primed to be, you know, a pizza, burger eating, cheesecake factory eating person who basically undoes everything.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd very easy to do. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people do kind of fall back into that, which is exactly why we're trying to promote, all these healthy foods and kind of a, back to basics type lifestyle with the vegetables and the lean protein, lean meat and all this. So yeah, it'd be very easy to do. Now, I will admit, every year when we come down from a hunt, there's always, especially when I'm with my hunt partner, we always do have one like cheat meal, right? And it's always either like a milkshake burger on the way out, but that's it. The rest of the year, we're trying to eat pretty dang clean. But when you come off the mountain and you've just packed out a bowl and you are just completely spent, you're skinny, you're just drained, that swinging by the burger joint on the way out or the pizza place or whatever is like that one stop. We always tend to do that. It's just kind of a habit we have. And then, of course,
and you know what, Ryan? I would say that is actually beneficial in that state.
Perfect. That's what I was.
When it's done for a short period of time, it's actually extremely beneficial. It just can become detrimental if people don't understand. Because obviously they were doing that in different ways previously. I have a question for you though, man, because I'm curious. As you know, my background, I've kind of been asking you about sort of this and wanting to go back in the backcountry with you. But to what extent do you find fat animals in the when you kill these animals? How fat are they, and when are they at their fattest, or are they just so lean that it's crazy?
So what it is, deer and elk is extremely lean. The thing about deer is when we're taking them in the fall, and it varies drastically from just early like September. Coming into October, they're getting a pretty good healthy layer of fat on their back, but we're trimming that off, and it's it's not similar to beef where it's just kind of embedded in the meat itself. So we're taking that fat off of the outside, and we're not using it in any way really, except for bear fat. Bear fat's one of those things that we will actually use. But as far as deer and elk go, they are extremely lean, and when we're taking them. There's kind of the pre-season, which is August, September. We get those animals, and then they start really fattening up before the rut. And then, of course, during the rut, these bucks they're crazy, like we get, and they're just running all this fat off. And by mid-November, they've got not 1 ounce of fat on their bodies anywhere.
They only have one thing on their mind.
Yeah, they're just a bag of bones like we are when we come out of the hills. So they've lost everything by middle of November, I'd say.
And see, the reason I ask is this is interesting for everyone in this conversation. I'm so fascinated by this because if you look at research on modern day hunter gatherers, and you look at anthropological data, they're essentially we lived in a very cyclical way. So there were times where there was not a whole lot of fat in our diets, and other times where there was. And so it's interesting to see that how these animals change. Having me not being someone who's accustomed to it, it's just pretty interesting to hear how that happens. And so I can already tell Ryan and hunters like you would know this. People who understood the backcountry would be having a use for that fat that they would probably be putting to use throughout the year, and knowing when it was available and knowing when it wasn't going to be available.
Well, I tell you, as far as, the only real fat that I utilize a lot, and that's bears. Now, I hunt bears every year in the fall, and these are bears that are just gorging themselves on blueberries. Not really a spring bear guy. It's just not something we have the option on doing here in Washington State. But in the fall, these bears get up in these berry fields, up in the high country, and they are just chowing down on blueberries, huckleberries, and they're just putting on all these carbs, and it's some of the best eating meat that I've had. My whole family, all the girls love it. Anybody I feed this meat to, they may be a skeptic going into it. They absolutely love it. I've never had a fall bear be bad. And one of the reasons is because of the fat that they are just stuffing themselves on those berries. And I'll literally, find 4 or 5 inches of fat on their backs. And a lot of times I'll pull that fat off and I'll utilize it. I'll bring it back and render it down and use it in certain things. And, it's just
yeah. And in previous days, like in this book I was talking about, most of the fat they were getting in their diet was from buffalo or wild game or bear, what they killed, and they were harvesting that fat, or they were getting it, like the Northwest natives were getting it from fatty fish, right? Salmon and stuff. And so I think there's a big trend in fat right now, right? And this idea of being ketogenic all the time, which we know isn't sustainable. Being ketogenic all the time is really hard to do, right? But if you think back to these natural cyclic diets, they were eating a lot of high fat when they had it, and then they were going into, and they could do ketogenesis easier through that and get through things. And then certain times of the year when they had access to fruits and roots and all these kinds of things, they were eating more. Their bodies were doing different hormonal activities.
I mean, I love this discussion so much because, Hillary, you and I, we talk a lot about, metabolism and, sort of how the metabolism works. The metabolism is changeable and adaptable. And one of the reasons why people suffer metabolic issues is because they keep their diet the same. It's a high carb, high fat diet, year in and year out. Plus, they're not moving around like buffalo.
Yeah.
but the bottom line is that this sort of, when you follow this story to its conclusion, you have all of the hints you need about how the metabolism works. The metabolism changes, and the reason the metabolism changes is because our environment changes. The foods we're eating are changing. The fat content of those foods are changing. The foliage is changing. Our metabolism is built to change, built to adapt. And so whenever we create a lifestyle that keeps us doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, for example, the eat less, exercise more approach, you do that for too long, it's going to cause problems. Your metabolism is going to run into issues. Just like if you do the eat more, exercise less approach for too long, your metabolism will be in issues. But you just heard Ryan talk about the idea, hey, Jay, look, I'm going to eat less, exercise more state in the backcountry, hauling stuff, doing all this. And when I come out of that, I spend a brief amount of time in an eat more, exercise less approach. But then he moves sort of away from that and probably does something different. And so this cyclical approach of spending time in sort of an eat less, exercise less period of time, and eat more, exercise more period of time, and eat less, exercise more period of time, and eat more, exercise less period of time. This is the way that the metabolism actually works, and it loves to do this, and this is how it stays healthy.
Yeah, that was your second book, your book, Lose Weight Here. You really go into basically fixing your problem areas based on this eat less, exercise less, eat more, exercise more cycling, and how it's hormonal responses and how that changes it. And that's what I really like about it, because I think mixing it up is really vital for creating changes. You can't, if you're going to think of yourself as a seasonal, as a human being, which means we're seasonal, just like the seasons, even though you live you live in California, I don't know, your seasons aren't kind of like they are up here.
You don't have snow on the ground like we do today.
No, I don't. Thank God for that. I don't have bears chasing me around either.
That either, no. Some cougars down there, but that's about it.
But it's this whole idea, right? Is like if we're living seasonal and then kind of eating seasonal, and if it's winter, you're probably eating more. The goal would be that you're eating more, and maybe I think most people eat more and exercise less, right? Yeah, but wouldn't that be a little bit normal with seasons, just based on the whole idea of, yin
well, I know,
and
with us having a garden, for example, we've talked about this before, we are eating salads, a couple times a day in the summer when we've got fresh veggies, we got spinach, bok choy, all these greens. Our diet definitely changes. We're eating a lot leaner in the summertime versus now. Yeah, we have a few more carbs and we still eat a lot of lean protein, but it absolutely changes. We don't have the greens. I don't like going to the store and buying, store-bought spinach this time of year. I'd prefer not to. So I do tend to find myself eating a lot more protein, and things not so salad related like I'm so accustomed to in the summer.
Yeah, that's going to be, in my way of thinking, that is going to be beneficial and healthy for the metabolism. It's basically like, what am I in right now? Am I in fall? Am I in winter? Am I in spring? Am I in summer? And how can I duplicate that? And to me, a hunting athlete sort of gets this. So the whole point is, if you're, listening to this and being like, how can I use this to my advantage, sort of my sport and, sort of this activity, think about taking your time in the backcountry and actually duplicating as much of that as possible year round. And I know you guys are doing that, but I would think that this is probably the closest thing we can get to a modern day, there's a lot of talk about, paleo diets and this and this and that. This is the healthiest and probably the closest we can get to the modern day, Paleolithic lifestyle by using this cycling approach. And especially you two are living this because you are actually, doing it, growing your own food, hunting your own meat. That's, but for those of us who can't do that, but are interested in just going out every once in a while, take Ryan and Hillary's approach and essentially say, I can actually duplicate this in what I'm doing and what I'm bringing home from the grocery store as well. And it's going to benefit your health dramatically.
This was really something we wanted to live. We didn't even think about promoting it. It was just the way that we wanted to live. And each year we get older and we have children now at our age, we realize we need to stay young. And so,
and I want my, I want my children, I want my daughters to see, kind of how we've lived. And, I think, like you mentioned before, there's a lot of this has been lost. And I think promoting it and educating people as to there is another way. It doesn't all have to be what the masses are doing, where they're tending to go with the processed foods. There's an easier way to do it, a better way to do it. It's not that difficult. And that's what we're trying to do, is just get some information out there for guys that maybe want to, try it the way that we're doing it and growing your own food and getting out there and hunting, or, at least changing the way that you take in animal protein. Maybe look for a different type, or not the real fatty grain fed cows that's out there. That's the cheap stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah, I love that thought, man. I think you guys are doing amazing stuff.
Thanks. I have a question for you, Jade, because you don't hunt.
Nope.
You're not a hunter. And I've always wondered, like, for guys that don't hunt, is there a piece of you that would want to? I mean,
yeah. Absolutely. I think I had a conversation with Ryan, I don't know, 6 to 9 months ago. We talked, and I think every man sort of, it's sort of the warrior mentality that I think is kind of bruised down in every man. There's a sort of a calling. And I think that because it is something that we are not accustomed to, it's like we have a fear of it, and one of the things I would like to do is go out and learn just how to, to start, just how to read the environment, to set up camp, to do things that, Ryan would be like, dude, what are you back in kindergarten, Jay? What the hell are you doing? Like this is the way we do it, but, it would be similar to like people going into the gym with me and learning, powerlifting for the first time or something like that. It's just, It's a skill set that we oftentimes take for granted. But yes, from my perspective, this is something that calls to, it's one of those things that is a birthright in a sense. We are built, just like we're built to connect with people, we're built to connect to the land and the environment in which we live. And when you separate that from people, I think there's always sort of a longing to get back to that. It either shows up as fear, oftentimes of the unknown, but it's there. So whenever someone is either fearful or excited about it, there's something very powerful in that. It's sort of like who we are as humans.
Yeah, and I've noticed just through social media, I get a lot of the younger guys, the teeners and the guys in their early 20s, and I think it is such a big rite of passage that they're seeing as there's an advantage there, right? And that's why I love every year trying to get a guy or two out there that hasn't done it or just hasn't seen it or shows just a slight interest in seeing what goes on up there. Maybe they're not going to hunt. Maybe they're just going to go out and hang along on a scouting trip or just go for some hikes or just kind of, have a conversation about it and talk about it and what advantages we get over it. So it is pretty exciting, getting these younger guys involved. And like I said, I think it is a huge rite of passage. And it sure seems like once guys have done it, they get the benefits that I get out of it. They see it as a time to get up there and relax, and you come back just totally energized and a lot greater respect for nature and the animals that you're actually hunting and all this. And it's definitely something that I'm pretty, every year it seems like that's one of those things that, I'd love to get a guy like you out there and just see what you think, see what you think about going in. It's going to be hard. It's going to be, definitely difficult and something you're not accustomed to. And always interested to see what your opinion or what their opinion would be on something like that once they've actually done it.
And that, isn't that what we crave too as humans? Are like, to me, it's like while you're in it, there's apprehension and there's probably, it's tough while you're doing it. You come out of that, kind of having grown through that experience. So nothing worthwhile is really easy in that regard. Easy is earned. And so from my perspective, it's something that people should, whenever you have apprehension about something, it's something that you have to do, which is one of the reasons why I would love, to do that. And I think it's something that, I have a belief that literally this is, an entire one of these. It's probably not good for the backcountry, but it's one of these industries that is just, can explode because people, look, people are going to love this way more than going and getting on a roller coaster and eating cotton candy because it basically, it's exciting. It's calls to their nature. It's, it is the original, amusement park.
Right. Yeah, it's a challenge. Everybody likes a challenge, right? I mean, a lot of us guys, we love to challenge ourselves. And I think, we all kind of get out of it what we put into it. The harder the challenge, the more reward we get when it's been accomplished. And that's what I get out of it. I know, if I put an elk down or a deer down and, I'm not like a big fist bumper or super excited, I immediately go into this mode of, here comes the work. It's time to buckle down and get this animal out. And I know it's going to suck, but I know that sense of accomplishment I get. And once I get back to the truck and I drive home, it's hard to describe. You've done something, you've accomplished so much, you've got a ton of meat for the family for the year. And, I love it. And I think a lot of guys that get into it or haven't tried it, they would get the same thing out of it.
I'll say one more thing about this, which I think is really interesting, just as an aside here, and, I do think it's powerful, but you ever meet someone that has like just crazy charisma, like everyone's just, sort of, they don't even have to say a word. And I bet you, Ryan, this is you. It's like, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to talk to anyone. You're probably introverted in the back of the room. Yeah. Everyone notices you. There's this presence about you. There's this power about you, and there's this warmth about you, which are the components of charisma, presence, power, and warmth. As men, one of the things that we crave more than anything is the power component. Women tend to do a little bit better on the warmth component than us, so we each sort of have our strengths in this. And that power component comes from exactly what you were talking about, the ability to see something, be slightly intimidated by it, know that it's going to take all your effort, accomplish it, and then take a look back and be like, wow, and see your own power and sort of look at yourself from outside looking in. That's what creates, sort of this charismatic effect that I think is missing in so many men. And so again, I go to this place like, anybody who's trying to build charisma and the power component of that, this is one of those things that you can be doing. Training, working out with weights is another one. But it was just an interesting aside for me to kind of hear you say that, because I think if nothing else, people miss this idea. And this is why they don't feel powerful in other aspects of their life or ineffective in other aspects of their life, because there is some rollover.
Right.
Have you ever, Jade, do you ever watch Survivor?
Well, I watched that. Is that show still on? I think I watched that like 10, 15 years ago.
we don't really have TV. We don't have cable, but we can watch it on Hulu or whatever. It's the one show we watch with our daughter because she loves it. There's all these challenges, right? Yeah. And the funny thing about Survivor is for years, people would be like, Ryan, you need to get on Survivor. You totally win. And we're like, Ryan would be picked off so fast because they always vote off the strong alpha male who wins all the challenges and builds all the fires and builds their shelter and catches all their fish and gets all their coconuts and wins and stands in the back and doesn't say anything, and they always vote him off because nobody wants that guy around because that guy deserves $1 million. And it's weird, that when you get people together in that kind of environment where they're now competing with each other, the overall thought is to have that guy around. We really need that guy. Actually, none of us will survive or eat for the next 40 days if we don't have that guy around. Like, we're going to shrivel up and die without that guy. And they know that. They'll say that. Like, if I vote Ryan off, I will starve to death. But Ryan will win the $1 million. So we have
Ryan's
to get rid of him first. Get rid of him first. And we sit there going, that is so stupid. You're going to be starving.
I know.
I always that guy.
It's funny. Every single show. I don't know how many episodes. There's got to be
15 years.
15 years. Yeah, there's got to be like 40 seasons or something like that. And every year, it's like the one guy I end up rooting for is the guy that caught the fish or the guy that was able to start the fire. And inevitably, I'm always wrong because that guy always gets booted. But
last week, we're watching it, and there's a guy, it's like a season where these are all second chancers. So people that basically lost the $1 million before and they got voted to come back. There's like this guy who's not the alpha male. He can't even throw a ring. Like he's not very good at doing man stuff. Let's put it that way. He's crying that he needs to vote Joe off, and Joe is the alpha male, and he is basically keeping those people alive. He's the nicest guy around. He looks amazing. He wins every challenge. You just want to have him as your like brother or husband or whatever. And this other guy is crying because last time I didn't vote off that alpha male and I lost to him. I gotta vote him off. And Ryan's like, is he crying over this? And I'm like, he's obviously so really
funny.
torn on.
You want to know my thought on this, man? This is what humans. Here's the problem with humans. Confidence is inspiring to confident people, and threatening as hell to insecure people. And so someone like Orion is going to be absolutely adored and admired and loved and also simultaneously hated. Because if you're an insecure person, you are threatened by that kind of power.
Oh, man.
Yeah. That's crazy. Ryan would never like even get into this conversation normally, but
now it's here and he has to be.
Yeah, he has to be. But it's true, and he'll say to me, "What's wrong with that dude? Like, who raised that guy?" And I'm like, "Honey, it's just a TV show." But what he's really saying is like, this guy needs to like pick himself up out of like where he's at and get on with it and throw a ball like a man, And I was a woman, and here's the deal.
Well, I just can't ever support a guy who is just so, I'll say it, wimpy, that he can't do anything. He can't chop down a tree. He can't build a fire or keep a fire going or cook or catch a fish. I was like, I could never support that guy. So
I'm definitely not going now, man. I'm not going on this trip with you.
Well, here's the thing, though, right?
Hey, he's the wimpiest dude on the planet. What the hell's wrong with this guy?
I think you'd have no problem taking a tree down, Jade. I'm pretty sure you could probably just snap it.
You're like, Jade, you stay here. I'm going to get the bear. You chop the tree. I'll be like, no problem.
If Ryan insults this guy who's crying because he didn't vote the alpha male off, my initial reaction as a woman, well, you need to think about other people's feelings. Like, don't make fun of him. My initial reaction is to do that, right? And Ryan's looking at me like, are you kidding me? Would you want to date that guy? And I'm thinking, no, not really. But that you should really like not talk about him like that. And he says, his thought is, listen, if somebody doesn't give this guy some direction into this manhood thing, he's not going to win, right? Like, he's not going to be, and this guy could be a millionaire. We don't know. He could have like a multi-million-dollar business somewhere, but we know he's not like throwing balls for a living.
Well, that guy was like, going back to the beginning, that guy was not initiated, I guess, into manhood in the right way. I can just tell you that much.
But this whole thing I've had to come through about men and my husband, because he's very unique in that aspect, is that he's not going to apologize for being a man. And I think that's where I feel like this initiation process and men not being able to, it's hard to explain. But do you know what I'm trying to get at here? Where
I do high-end coaching with people who we would probably all know by name, and CEOs and things like that. And I can tell you one of the things that men struggle with. And this is for the women listening, and we'll see what Ryan has to say about this. But it's this idea of vulnerability. I've read all Brene Brown's books. I love all her stuff. But a vulnerable man, is sort of this mixed bag, because on the one hand, everyone says, "Oh, be vulnerable," and this and that. But as soon as a man does that for any length of time, he's basically branded a pussy. He's basically said, you are not a strong man. So for men, a better term is probably remaining open. The essence of a man is someone who, if you want to talk about my feelings, then ask me about it. I'll mention it a few times. I'm not going to go over it and over it and over it and over it with you. And it's not something I need to do because it keeps me from my directed focus on what I'm trying to do. Now, I'll remain open, but I don't know that anyone, sort of wants a man who's talking about his feelings over and over and over and over and over again, right? What we want is a man who can do that, a man who can be powerful and say, look, this is the way I feel on it, but not bring it up again and again and again and blame and complain. Part of the essence of man is getting shit done, and that's part of what, being a masculine presence in the world is all about. So that's sort of my take on that from the life coaching stuff that I do. Vulnerability has its place. It's a little bit more tricky for a man to manage.
I couldn't agree more, man. I listen to it, I'm like, yes, finally, yeah, somebody's saying it.
And by the way, anyone should go read all Brene Brown's books. They're fascinating. I just don't think she has the appreciation of what the male struggle is. That's just not. We're not really appreciated for sort of our strengths as much anymore, which is sort of tough.
And I think in the modern culture, like I said, me having to also learn about this a lot and learning biochemistry, understanding hormones, understanding definitely just even the hormonal difference between men and women and how our brains function. I do feel that sometimes men, they are expected to be everything and nothing. Like they're expected to have emotions all the time. They're expected to be a man all the time. They're expected to provide. They're expected to be, there all the time for you and da-da-da-da-da. But at the same time, they're
get everything done.
Get everything done. But we're not really promoting men to exhibit their manlyhood in a way that's positive.
Yeah, James Hollis puts it this way. You guys be interested. Here's what James Hollis says, and I thought this was a fascinating take on this. He said, women have been physically oppressed for, decades and generations and thousands of years.
Right.
Men in the modern era have been psychologically repressed and oppressed because they're basically put in a box that does not sort of fit them. So, we're starting to see now that obviously women are taking their power fully as it should be. Mm-hmm. And what we don't want to have happen in the process is for men to lose theirs. So just because we've had this very wrong and sort of offensive sort of dichotomy between men and women for so many, decades and thousands of years doesn't mean that as women take their power, men should be losing theirs. It's just let women take their powerful place alongside powerful men. And let's not bring powerful men down in the process.
That's what I meant to say right there.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
He says.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay, so talking about powerful men, can you give us just a few takeaways on, because I know you have this testosterone program, this online program, and we really want to kind of help promote that to our community. And could you give us a little bit of background on that? And then maybe some things that our listeners can some easy things our listeners can walk away with today to help their testosterone. I know we've touched on a bunch of different reasons, but maybe just kind of
I know I'm going to go chop some wood right after this conversation.
And actually, that's a good segue into this because that's exactly how you want to think about this. Think about everything we just talked about. The natural way of living is a very testosterone-dominated sort of approach. What we want to do with testosterone is we want to essentially have periods of times where we are pushing, grinding, directed, chopping down trees, shoveling dirt, hunting in the backcountry, pushing around weight, doing things that are very powerful in their sort of outward sort of appearance, lifting, hunting, moving, running, chopping, all of these kinds of things. Then what we want to also be doing is we want to essentially be coming back and doing a very supportive diet that keeps that testosterone level high, but the stress hormones lower. And so this means good quality protein, fats when they're appropriate, enough starch, but not too much. And so the way to think about this is to think about, bison or chicken or beef or salmon or some type of protein source with plenty of vegetables, and then enough fat or starch to go along with this. One hint I'll give you guys, especially you backcountry guys, is whey protein is one of those processed foods that probably is a godsend for you all in terms of being able to give you a lot of what good quality meat will do. And one of the things that good quality proteins have is branched chain amino acids. These are the things that keep your immune system up, suppress hunger, make sure you're not losing muscle out there in the backcountry. Whey protein is probably the closest to that versus good quality meat. And so making sure you combine that. And then taking this aspect of when you are out of those things, you are essentially reconnecting with your bros and reconnecting with your lover and basically lowering stress hormones on top of that. Now, this is the lifestyle. Now, if you're not in the backcountry, I'll just give you a 1, 2, 3 of this. It's basically lift weights, move a lot, walking and gardening and chopping and all that kind of stuff. Eat a sensible diet that is rich in protein and vegetable matter with enough fat and sugar and starch, but not too much. That is essentially the lifestyle. And then after that, there's a few things I can give you, and then I can sort of wrap it up for you in terms of what about supplements and things like that. The truth of the matter is no supplement is going to do anything that trying to duplicate the backcountry in your lifestyle will do. Not just when you're out in the backcountry. Duplicate that lifestyle throughout the year in a cyclical fashion. No supplement is going to be able to replace that. So you need that in place. Then once you have that in place, add in, a whey protein supplement is probably going to be a good thing to do. And then certainly there is a place and a time for testosterone replacement therapy for guys who are not able to get their testosterone back due to poor lifestyle or due to age. And that's something that this program, talks about. But the truth of the matter is everything we just talked about is a testosterone enhancing lifestyle without even trying.
So my question real quick, say you do get tested and you realize that your testosterone is on the low range. Mm-hmm. How long does it take? Like if you do get to the lifestyle that you just alluded to, with a healthy diet and getting out and getting these activities done and, hunting or chopping or all this, how long does it take to actually, would it take to get those numbers back up to within the range of health?
Yeah, easily. I can give you a really easy answer because I've done this so often. It's about a 3-month time period. You're going to see a turnaround. So it happens very, very quickly. You'll see a sustained turnaround in about a 3-month period of time. And what will come along with this, by the way, is one easy trick for you guys listening. Measure your waist circumference. And if your waist circumference is over 40 inches, I can already tell you your testosterone is probably in the toilet. If your testosterone if your waist is between like 35 and 40, you might be on the borderline. Typically, once your waist gets down below 35, you're going to be in an optimal testosterone zone. And then as it starts getting lower than that, depending on your size, you'll start seeing testosterone go in the toilet again. So there's this Goldilocks effect. Too thin, too lean, too underfed and overworked, testosterone goes in the toilet. Too overfed, too fat, too, sort of sitting on the couch, testosterone goes in the toilet. And so what will happen is this natural lifestyle after about 3 months should regulate that. And the best way to look at this is the waist to chest measurement should be, if you measure your waist and then you measure your chest around with the underarms, right? Just like they would do if they're measuring a suit, not shoulder width. But if you do the chest to waist measurement, that measurement should be below 0.8. And if it's above that, you're probably someone who's having testosterone issues. So that's a really quick way to measure this through this 3-month period to see if this is turning around. And by the way, guys, women in attraction research across the board, across cultures, women who see a man with a waist to chest ratio of 0.8 or less are pretty much sexually attracted to that physique. Anytime it goes above that, the man becomes less attractive. And for you women who are listening, the hourglass shape is your barometer. It's chest, waist, and hips. But this is how to kind of think about, am I moving in the right direction here?
Well, I have a question too about women. So women, have testosterone. We just
Mhm.
don't have as much, obviously, as men. Just like men have estrogen, they don't have as much as women. What do these same activities improve testosterone in, let's say, women or menopausal, postmenopausal women? Because we know those naturally go down in women as well, and that testosterone is important in women for libido and activity.
Yeah, it gets really complicated for you women, but I'll give you the complicated story. Think about it like this. When a woman is under stress, first thing that happens is stress hormones, cortisol goes up. They get a little bit more of a human growth hormone kick than men do. And when chronic stress kicks in, actually you'll see in women that they have cortisol high, adrenaline high, progesterone low, and testosterone high, actually. And so testosterone is not a hormone that women really want to be very high, but they don't want it low either. And here's what ends up happening with women. The same things that Ryan is getting, when he goes out and he gets this testosterone kick, women's testosterone is actually estrogen. Estrogen works a lot like female testosterone. And when estrogen is combined with human growth hormone in women, that's really what we want. So you really don't want to think much about testosterone being super advantageous for women unless they're low in menopause. What produces this healthy effect in women is actually the combination of estrogen with human growth hormone. And yes, all the activities we just talked about duplicate that hormonal effect in women. So for men, it's testosterone. For women, it's estrogen combined with human growth hormone. And for you women, you might not know this, but you get a little bit more of a human growth hormone kick than men do from exercise. And that's the advantage. That's the thing that'll keep you lean and tight and keep that hourglass shape.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the hormone picture, I've read your books and I've just marked up lose weight here like everywhere because I'm a physician too, but if you're not constantly learning about these things, as you know, you're a biochemistry major, right? Biochemistry changes like all the time. Physiology, we're always finding new things out. And it's kind of the same with hormones, right? Like you never talked really much about like digestive hormones and
Nope.
Now it's like there's so many new hormones we've discovered that are influencing other hormones and impacting so many other things. And it's really, really interesting.
And I would be completely blind. It's funny how we all have our expertise, right? I know nothing now about herbal therapies. You're the person I'm going to call to be like, Hillary, what the hell I use this for? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's very different in all of our expertise, but the hormonal approach to this is really about lifestyle, and you can do a lot with it.
Right. Well, I want to ask you one more question, kind of on this same line. So that testosterone information and the waist to chest ratio for men and kind of measuring those parameters. What about like in your first book, The Metabolic Effect Diet, you talk about body types the way different people, you have 3 different types. You have a sugar burner, a muscle burner, and then a mixed burner. And I'm wondering if you could just give us just a little bit of a tidbit on those and how that's going to also affect the way that you're able to change these hormones.
Yeah, absolutely. We all have certain tendencies in terms of the best way to think about this is, some people, right, if you get stressed out, someone passed away in the family, you go through a breakup, or you have stress at work. Some people, their appetite shuts off, right? And other people just want to, go eat pints of Ben and Jerry's all day long. This gives you an idea of the difference between how stress hormones impact us. The person who doesn't want to eat is more of a stress hormone driven person, and their stress hormones are breaking down fat and protein on their body. We call those muscle burners to feed them, so they're not that hungry. The other person, which is more of a sugar burner, requires calories and sugar during that stressful process, and so they're going to seek those foods out. So some people sort of eat to live, and some people live to eat, and this has a important component in our healthcare. Now, the reality of the situation is there's infinite types of people. These 3 types that we talk about, sort of the muscle burner and the sugar burner and the person who lies in between. It's just that you can take these types and be like, oh, Jade, I get you. I'm more of an eat to live person. And, I need to eat when I'm under stress. Oh, and Jade, I'm more of a, live to eat person. I get stressed out and I don't want to eat. Well, if we take these things, this is just giving you a place to start. So the person who's impacted by stress negatively needs to do a lot of things that reduce stress. Getting out in the backcountry, walking, hanging out in green settings, sleeping, sex and physical affection, massage and meditation. The person who is more of the food-driven person needs to watch their lifestyle in terms of, I need to reduce my calorie intake, watch my carb intake, and this kind of stuff. And this tells you really quickly on, should I be following a paleo diet or should I be following a meditation program, right? And so once we have these beginning places, then we can begin being a metabolic detective and finding our unique place. And so depending on what Ryan might be or what I might be or what you might be, Hillary, we start there. And then we say, okay, based on that, I will start with that base diet or that base program, and then I will adjust and tweak and figure out my unique metabolic type. So there's not 3 metabolic types. There's infinite metabolic types, but these 3 metabolic types can get you headed in the right direction so you can figure yours out.
Interesting. Yeah, I know Hillary has told me that I'm a sugar burner. So I never knew exactly why, but...
Well, so just the way we like gain or lose weight. So you know me, Jade, I'm very stress hormone driven. So your sister-in-law, Dr. Jillian Teta, she did a podcast with us. She's our digestive expert and she's one of my best friends, right? She's your sister-in-law. Yep. And 10 years ago when I got out of medical school, I was stressed out. I lost a ton of weight. I'm not the typical person, so I get skinny when I get stressed out, right? People are like, are you eating? And I'm eating. I'm just skinny. And she's like, you're a muscle burner and you need to start doing this. So she gave me the Metabolic Effect Diet. I utilized that diet. I ended up getting pregnant because it wasn't easy for me to even get pregnant, right? Because I was running on stress hormones all the time. And so that helped. But I'm still kind of like that. I fall back into that pattern. My tendency would be not to eat. I like breakfast. I'll eat breakfast. I'll always eat some breakfast. But I could go the whole day and not eat, right? And then if I get stressed out or I have an emotional thing in my life, I don't want to eat. I don't have hunger. I don't have the desire to eat. And I get very jittery. So some days I can drink coffee and I feel fine. Some days I drink coffee, holy cow. I'm like, did I just shoot myself up with a bunch of like methamphetamine? It's really bad, right? Ryan, and I get really lean, really skinny. And Ryan's always like, you just like go to the gym for a week and you look like a muscle model. Dude, and I'm like, well, and my brother's the same way. He was an Olympic athlete. He hasn't worked out. I don't think my brother's worked out in like 15 years. Yeah, the guy's ripped. He looks like he just got off, he just finished like an Olympic ride. Yeah. And we just genetically have that.
Yeah, he'll had a baby and then decided, I'm going to put in a few months of hard work in the gym and then just go do this bikini contest. And she did awesome at it. She gained all this muscle, and I mean, it was incredible, the transformation she did.
But what I did is I had to increase my food. So I had to eat like 5 times a day, right? Yeah. And not big meals, but I had to like feed my metabolism. It's that same idea of the bodybuilding thing, right? I started lifting heavy things. Instead of a tendency, I'd go out, I'd be stressed out. I want to go run. I want to go do some cardio. Right? Yeah. It's like, don't do that, girlfriend. You're going to like waste away if you go do a bunch of cardio. So I started lifting heavy things. I started eating. All that naturally decreased my stress hormone. I was able to gain muscle and my brain worked better. Like I felt so clear in my head. But that's kind of how I am as a person. I've always been like that. I'm very driven. I'm very type A. Ryan goes crazy with me. We've talked about this before. I have 1,000 ideas a second. And he's like, stop. No more ideas. I can't take this anymore. One idea at a time.
Stop. No more ideas.
It's too much.
He will literally be like, I don't know what you're talking about right now, but we were just talking about something else.
It's so bad. It's like we'll be in the middle of a project, like trying to focus on something. And then she like hits me with 3 or 4 side ideas that would take us down this rabbit hole, a completely different direction. I'm like, come on, let's focus.
You guys are perfect for each other, man. You are like totally balance each other out.
We are literally, our birthdays too, we are exact opposites. I'm born in March, he's born in October. So we are like exact opposites, okay?
I love it.
Okay, so here's Ryan. He loves exercise. He loves outdoors. He has to be active. But if he quit being active and he didn't have these outlets, his tendency would be to sit on the couch and watch Survivor all day with a bag of chips, maybe 2 bags of chips, and then a bag of, a container of salsa, a bag of chips, then half of a steak. And then that's if he was just a lazy, that's what he would be doing. So what he does is the minute he starts eating too many carbohydrates, he gets a little spare tire around the middle. Now he's really lean. His legs are lean. And his upper body's lean, but he gets that thing around the middle, right? His mind gets slower. He doesn't have a million ideas a minute. It's more like 1 idea an hour. He's just slower. He's slower. So he's not running on those stress hormones all the time. But what will happen too with him is his work is really stressful. But he'll let it build up. Problems will build up. He'll never communicate it. He's super trustworthy. Build up. And then he'll just explode one day, right? That's kind of how Ryan works. So we're very different. So he's that sugar burner. He wants to consume, right? And he doesn't really understand excessive stress hormone. Yeah, he doesn't understand, what do you mean coffee gives you jitters? I don't get that,
Well, I'm on my 3rd cup this morning, and I feel fine.
Yeah, I'm like you, Ryan. Keoni, and my brother Keoni, who's married to Dr. Jillian Teta, he is like Hillary.
He's totally like me.
Yeah, he's totally like you. He's a slow oxidizer of caffeine, a muscle burner. I'm like you, dude. It's I can drink espresso right before I go to bed and be fine.
Me too, man. I'm with you, and I will sometimes. It's just probably not the best thing to do.
So we find that if we have this lifestyle where we're eating, even if we're eating the same things, but like me, I need to eat a little more consistently, right? I need to force myself to lift heavier things and not do as much cardiovascular or more stress on my body exercise. He does better with more cardio, right? And he does better with a little less carbohydrate. But if we kind of balance that in our lifestyle, what we're eating and our outdoor activity, then we can keep it pretty balanced. When we get out of balance, you see these 2 dichotomies show up. And that's why I love your book, because now I can look at a patient, look at their body type, look at how they're, what they're eating, what their problems are, and kind of go, oh, yeah, it's really, really interesting. I recommend everybody to read that book, The Metabolic Effect Diet.
That's sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. So you have a lot of programs on your website, and we, obviously want to help promote those. The Testosterone Project, we're going to be sharing that on our website. So folks out there who are interested in learning, diving deep into the biochemistry and kind of what testosterone is doing for you and then how to help it. That's what that program's for.
Yeah, that's the one I think is probably your people are going to be most interested in. It's testosterone is one of those things for men that it does everything. It really is, and it makes men. It's the winning hormone. Us men we oftentimes get a bad rap, but we need to be feeling like we are achieving and winning. It's kind of and that's what testosterone does. And the Goldilocks effect of hormones is oftentimes very, very difficult to get a hold of. And so that's what this particular program teaches you. And, as we men age, we are in a position where testosterone levels are falling, even in very healthy guys sometimes. And we're not exactly sure why that's happening. And so this program kind of tells you how to manage it. And if you're going to be considering testosterone replacement therapy, this is something that you might want to consider. And this goes into, probably the men's worst nightmare. As men age, oftentimes they'll start running into lack of erection, inability to get erection, lack of strong erections. This is oftentimes a testosterone effect. And this is the thing that's usually going to get guys sort of looking at this. And the thing I'd say with that is that, this is something that is, that will obviously freak men out and is something that is relatively commonplace. And testosterone management and sort of understanding where your testosterone levels are typically dealt with through lifestyle action. You don't normally need to go on TRT, but if you do, this program will help you with that as well. So,
wow, cool. This has been a very enlightening talk.
I love you guys. You're just both genius, and I can do this all day.
Well, yeah, and I look forward to one of these years, Jade, getting you up here, and I'm gonna drag you back into the backcountry and show you what you've been missing. But
I'm ready, bro. You better be ready for me, man. Let's bring some donuts back there.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I don't know, donuts are 2 sugar burners. That might not be a good idea.
Exactly. He'll come back, Hillary, and be like, I left Jade in the mountain. He had an insulin coma, and I couldn't pull him out.
Yeah, you'll be like, where is my Four Seasons hotel room and my room service?
Exactly.
And Ryan
I'm the kind of person that after 3 days out there, I'm going to be like, yo, man, I'm going to Four Seasons. I'll meet you there.
And I'll be like, well, it's only 10 miles out, Jade. It's going to be a little work to get out of here. So
yeah, good luck, Jade.
Well, why don't you, we'll have somebody videotape it, and we'll just, Jade, you have to make sure that when you're on there and you're talking, you'll be like crying. Oh, I should have never listened to the alpha male and done this horrible
look,
thing.
I'm totally voting him off as soon as I get the chance.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'll definitely need to have you on again because there's lots of topics that we could talk about with you. But we appreciate you doing this for us. We know you're a busy guy. You're in high demand. You're traveling the world.
This made my day, you guys. Totally made my day. Thank you.
So, and I'm going to send you that book. I think you'd really like it. It's actually a signed book from 1933. So you would like reading that about the old ways. And,
hell yeah, I would.
Okay, well.
Man, really appreciate you, Jade. Thanks for doing this with us.
You as well, my brother. So much love for you guys. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Hey, folks. Thanks for listening to the Hunt Harvest Health podcast. If you enjoyed the podcast, please leave us a review on iTunes or Stitcher. Visit our website at huntharvesthealth.com for more podcast stories and recipes. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Hunt Harvest Health. You can also message me at STHealthyHunter, that's STH, and I will be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Also tag your photos Hunt Harvest Health or Get Stealthy, as we enjoy seeing what you guys are doing as well.